بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق أجمعين محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. The subject of fiqh, and we are on the issue 122, discussing ways of proving najasat. Now, if something is there and we don't know is it tahir or najis, how to prove whether it is najis or not, the ways to be known. Say there are three ways of proving the najasat of anything. First, one should be certain or satisfied that something is najis. If one suspects that something may be najis, it is not necessary to avoid it. Accordingly, eating or drinking at stalls and guest houses where public goes to eat, and one knows that the food supply where people without scruples about najasat frequent is allowed, unless one knows that the food applied is najis. Here, 2 points to be stressed upon. One should be certain or satisfied. Actually, according to many of the ulama, they said everything is tahir for you unless you are certain, and we say certain means 100% sure that it is najis. So everything to be regarded as tahir for you, whether the houses, the people, the guest house, other thing, unless you have a knowledge that najasat is there and it become najis. Certainty means knowledge, and that knowledge means 100%, because if it is 99%, it's not knowledge. Again, doubt, but doubt 99%. Sometimes doubt is 50%, sometimes it's 99%. For 99 or 98 or 97, they said assurance, اطمئنان. And here he used the word satisfied. Satisfied means he has that type of assurance. The word in Arabic is اطمئنان. اطمئنان usually, according to ulama, is not regarded as sufficient to make things najis. Because the well-known hadith, كل شيء لك طاهر حتى تعلم أنه قذر, which means najis. So everything is tahir for you unless you know, and know means 100%. So you are certain. According to Ayatullah Al-Sistani, he said اطمئنان is sufficient. If you are satisfied, if you are sure, sure means 95, 96, 97, so high percentage, that is almost I am certain, not certain, but almost I am certain that it is najis. He said that should be regarded as najis. And I said this is according to Ayatullah Sistani, and may differ in this issue with other maraj. Now, so if one himself knows that something is najis, of course he can follow his knowledge. But if he doesn't know and is not satisfied that it is najis, then it is regarded as tahir. So here he gave example that if you go to house of the people, and some of the people, not all the people, are very careful about taharat and najasat, but still you are not really satisfied that thing, that the cup of tea they give it to you is najis, then you can regard it as tahir and drink a cup of tea, for example, or water or juice or food or whatever it is, if you are not satisfied or naturally not certain. So going in public or to houses of friends or general people, we know that not all the people are very strict about taharat and najasat, but we don't know. Usually they wash their hand and wash the dish properly and use water in the right way. So I cannot say that I am sure or satisfied that it is najis. Maybe 50%, 60% it is najis, but that is not sufficient to regard it as najis. So you say that percentage, I mean, if you don't know, even if there is possibility, not 96, 97, 98%, because that is called atminan, assurance or satisfaction. Not that possibility, but possibility of 60, 70, 80%. 80% I think it is najis, but still 20% it may be tahir. It is sufficient to make it tahir practically, and you will not regard it as najis. Because as we said before, in Shariat he made the things purify very easy. See, everything is purified unless you know it is najis. If you don't know, then you regard it as a purify, and well, according to Ayatullah, or if you are satisfied it is najis. So you say to go and eat with the friends or in the coffee shops or others, unless you are satisfied it is najis, then is allowed. But if you know then the food supplied is najis, then naturally you have to follow your knowledge, because that is the first way to know something is najis, is your knowledge. The second way, if a reliable person who possesses, controls or manages a thing says that it is najis. Now if somebody has the object with him, you come to my house and I tell you this glass of water is najis. I may not be adil, or I may not be too just witness here, but because the glass of water is in my possession, the plate of the dish of my house is in my possession, and I know what is going on in my house. So I know a child, his hand was, let us say, dirty with blood or urine, and he touched the glass and the glass is najis. And then a guest come and he saw the glass clean from outside, looks clean, but I know it was contaminated. So it is in my possession. If I say it is najis, then it is regarded najis. Well, unless that person, his statement is disqualified. I mean, you know that he himself is well, he has a special mood to say everything najis, you know. So no value for him to be a witness for that, you know. Some people have position and say, oh, everything in the house is najis. So now that is not something to be qualified. Or you want to make jokes, you know, to make your life difficult. So, oh, everything najis here, you know, the carpet, the chair, the wall, everything is najis. So, I mean, you cannot sit, or if you sit, you have to be very careful not to contaminate your clothes, for example. Now, we want to make jokes, for example. So that means he is not reliable. But general people, if they have something in their position and they say it is najis, then you can accept what they say. He gave an example. He said, if the wife or a servant or a maid says that a particular utensil or any other object which she handles is najis, it will be accepted as najis, because they have it and they know about it. Third, if two just persons testify that a certain thing is najis, provided that their testimony deals with the reason for najasat. You know, if they testify, but they say why it is najis, the reason for najasat, because they may not be sure of the reason, or let us say a mistake, because they said, well, we saw blood in it and then it is najis, but when you come, you examine, it was not blood, it was ink, red ink. So now you know that they testified about najasat, but you know their reason for it is not correct. They said this child, his hand was najis and he put his hand in the glass of water, but you know the child, his hand was not najis because his mother washed his hand in the kitchen, for example, or in the bathroom, and he is out. So he's out from the bathroom, not that his hand is wet because of contamination with urine, because he's a child, but because his mother washed his hand. So if they say the reason of najasat, and there are two just witnesses, again that is a proof for najasat. So otherwise, as I said, generally everything is to be regarded as tahir. Issue 123. If a person does not know whether a thing is tahir or najis because of ignorance, for example, if he does not know whether the droppings of a rat is tahir or not, he should inquire from those who know. But if he knows the rule and doubt the nature of particular thing, like when he doubts whether a thing is blood or not, or if he does not know whether it is blood of a mosquito or a human being, the thing is tahir and it is not necessary to make investigation or inquiry about it. See here, he said there are two cases, two issues. Sometimes he sees droppings of a mouse, for example, but he is not sure dropping of the mouse, is it tahir or najis? Then he has to ask. He cannot say, because I don't know, and maybe it is tahir, so everything is tahir. He say, no. You have seen something and you don't know that thing, is it najis or it is tahir? So it is a must for him to go and ask that I saw dropping of a mouse on my bed sheet, for example, and I don't know what is the issue about dropping. Is it tahir or it is najis? So he should ask and get the answer. Well, if the answer it is najis, then he regards them as najis. But sometimes he sees something red and he's not sure is it blood or ink. Then it is not necessary for him to go and ask about it. If he's sure it is blood, fine. But if he's not sure, there is something red on the carpet. Is it the blood of a mosquito or it is the blood of a rat, for example? He doesn't know what type of blood. Well, for him it's not obligatory to go and ask. If you want to ask, up to him, but it's not obligatory to go and ask, because the carpet was tahir before and now there is doubt this red thing made it najis or not, and he doesn't know what is that red thing, whether blood of mosquito, it is tahir, or it is maybe ink, which is also tahir, or not. And it says not obligatory to go and ask and inquire. You regard them tahir and continue, because you don't need to ask. As we said before, you have to follow whatever you were certain. You were certain before it was tahir, and there is doubt now it has become najis. The doubt will not nullify your certainty. Issue 124. A thing which was originally najis and one doubt whether it has become tahir will be considered as najis. Conversely, if a thing was originally tahir and if one doubt whether it has become najis, it will be considered as tahir. And it is not necessary to ascertain, even if it is possible to do so. Now, this plate was tahir. It was taken by a baby and he went to the kitchen, played with it and came back, and I don't know, maybe it made it najis. So should I regard the tahir or najis? You say, because before you were certain it is tahir, you should regard it as tahir and continue with that. Even if it is possible for you to go and see in the kitchen whether he played with something najis, or at his room, or elsewhere, wherever it was taken. But it is not necessary to go and ask, it was tahir, and you continue regarding it as tahir. There's no proof. And reverse, if it was najis and you are not sure that it was made tahir, then here you will regard it as najis till the time comes when you are certain that it was, let us say, washed and become tahir. These are, of course, examples of the general rule. You know it, but you give examples, practical examples from life, so that one understands the issue in a better way. Issue 125. If a person knows that out of the two vessels or two dresses used by him, one has become najis, but cannot identify which one of them, he should refrain from using both of them, But if he does not know whether it is his own dress or the dress which is no longer possessed by him, or is the property of some other person which has become najis, then it is not necessary for him to refrain from using his own. If he has his own two dresses and you know one of them is najis, one of them is not, then he should abstain from both of them. Say shubha mahsura. The doubt is between two, limited doubt. But if it belongs to somebody else, and my dress become najis, or I know one of the dress there is a splash of water and the water was najis, but I don't know the splash touched my dress or the dress of my colleague, you know. So I should regard my dress as tahir, and it's not necessary to go and inquire and ask and which one become najis or not. No, it is not wajib. These are in short about najasat, and we come to a new topic, how a tahir thing become najis. You know how najasat is transferred to other things. As we said before, there are two terms. We say the najis and mutanajjis. The original impurity, which is najis, and contaminated by original impurity, mutanajjis. So here, in what way, if najis things come in, or my body or my cloth come in touch with a najis thing, will it become right away najis, or there are conditions to transfer the najasat, to transfer the contamination? So he's discussing about that point. Issue 126. If a tahir thing touches a najis thing, and if either or both of them are so wet that the wetness of one reach the other, the tahir thing will become najis. Similarly, if the wetness of the thing which has become najis touches a third thing, that third thing will also be najis. It is commonly held by the scholars that a thing which has become najis transmits its najasat, but indefinite number of transmission is improbable. In fact, after a certain stage, it is tahir. Now, in transferring the najasat from najis thing, there are a common view that the najis thing will transfer najasat, but the contaminated thing also will transfer najasat. There is a rare view by some ulama. They said only najis thing will transfer najasat. But if other things are mutanajjis, are contaminated, they will not transfer najasat. Because you say contamination with najis, not mutanajjis. In traditions, the word used najis, and najis we have to deal with original impurities, not mutanajjis. But that is very rare view. Common ulama said najis and mutanajjis are the same. The way of transmission of najasat, he said there should be the thing, object should be wet. If it is a dry, najasat will not be transferred. For example, if my hand has blood and the blood is dry, and if my other finger is dry, if I put it on the blood, will not be najis. Najasat is not transferred because both are dry. It has to be one of them to be wet, so the wetness will transfer the najasat. And so if you touch a dog, if the dog is dry and your hand is dry, by touching the dog your hand will not be najis. But if the dog is wet or sweating for any reason, or you are having sweat in your hand and you touch the dog, then the hand will be najis. If the finger has, let us say, urine in it and it dried, and if you touch the table, if it is dry and the table is dry, najasat will not be transferred to the table. If it is wet, then najasat will be transferred. That is one, the way of transferring najasat is if it is wet. Now, we said the first view, they said mutanajjis will not transfer najasat, only najis will transfer. So if something become contaminated and original impurity is not there, it will not transfer najasat. But that is very rare view, as I said. The second view is a view of late Ayatullah Al-Khoi. He said, Al-Mutanajjis Al-Thani La Yunajjis. The second one, which is contaminated, will not transfer Najasat. For example, my foot or my shoes get Najis object in the street. So it becomes the first contaminated. And it touched my dress when my dress was wet or my shoes become. So my dress becomes the second mutanajjis, not the first one. The first one is my shoes contaminated directly by the najis object. The second one is my dress. Now my dress is najis, but my dress, if I touch it by hand, my hand will not be najis. The second contaminated najis will not transfer najasat. So this is the second view. The third view is of Ayatullah Al-Sistani. He said not the second will transfer, but the third one will not transfer najasat. The first, second, third will transfer, but the third one will not transfer najasat. And the fourth view, other ulama, they said always mutanajjis will transfer najasat. Whether the third or 10th or 20th, it will continue unless you make it tahir, you wash it, otherwise contamination will continue. Now, if you like to give an example of bacteria, let us say, so the first contact in bacteria is there. When you contact the other one, actually there is reduced bacteria, and the third one much reduced. So someday the first one, because direct with the infection, become najis, but will not transfer, but will not be like a source of bacteria, for example. Well, some said the second one, there's reduction. Some said the third one. Some said no, unless because it is contaminated, it will always be a source of contamination. So unless you wash it, clean it, make it tahir, otherwise it will be the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the 10th, the 20th contamination, all will be najis, and you have to wash it. Generally speaking, the ulama, they said contamination will continue, but late Ayatullah Khoi said the second one, and Ayatullah Al-Sistani said the third one. However, there are different views, and you should know about them. So if you read Risala of some other marja, you should not be astonished to hear these views. Issue 127. If a tahir thing touches a najis thing and one doubts whether either or both of them were wet or not, the tahir thing does not become najis. My hand is tahir and it touched the table which was najis. It is said there was urine of a child on this cloth and it dried. And I doubt whether my hand was wet or not. Doubt. Say doubt has no value because you were certain your hand was tahir, and now you have doubt your hand was contaminated or not. She said doubt has no value. 128. If there are two things and one does not know which one of them is tahir and which is najis, and later a damp tahir thing touches one of them, that thing does not become najis. Again, two things they are doubtful. Something touched them. I am not sure whether it touched the najis one or the tahir one. It was tahir and it touched one of them, but that one maybe not the najis one. And because it was tahir, then I will take it granted as it is tahir till I know it touched a najis thing. Issue 129. If the ground, cloth or similar things are wet, then only that part will become najis where najasat reaches, and the remaining part will remain tahir. I mean, if my cloth is wet in part of it and then it touched a najis thing, only that part will be najis, not all of it will be najis. So all that part which is wet become najis. If my hand is wet and I touch something najis, only the hand will be najis, not all the body will be najis. So if I wash only my hand because my hand was contaminated. But you want to say that it is not that all the body or all the object or all the dress will be najis. No, only that part which was wet and touched najasat will be najis, and other parts will remain as tahir. He gave, same is the case with melon and cucumber. Cucumber is wet. If part of it touched somewhere najis, the najasat will not be transferred to all of it. Only that part which become najis, you have to wash it. So what you want to say, only that part which touch will be najis, not transferred to all of it. Issue 130. When a syrup or ghee is means oil, is in a fluid state in a manner that if some quantity of it is removed, it does not leave an empty trace. The entire quantity will become najis immediately when even their slightest part become najis. But if it is solidified and when some part of it is removed, a trace of emptiness is seen, then only that part will be najis which has come in contact with najasat, even if the empty trace gets filled up later on. So if the droppings of a rat fall on it, only that part will become najis on which the droppings have fallen, and the rest will remain tahir. You see, here is a practical problem with semi-liquid or semi-solid things. You have oil, and you don't know if this oil is a liquid or it is not liquid. If it is liquid, then if a drop of najasat is there, all of it will be najis. If it is not liquid, let us say solid or semi-solid, then only that part which has been contaminated will be najis. If you remove it by a spoon, other parts are tahir. Now, how to differentiate whether it is liquid or not? It says sign of liquidity. If you by a spoon take part of it, if it is liquid, it will be filled right away. There is no gap. But if you take part of it and there is a gap, will be shown until gradually it gets filled, so it shows that it is not semi-liquid. Semi-liquid, all of it will not be najis. It is say like honey, for example. If you take part of it, it will take time till it gets filled. So it is semi-liquid. So if you have honey, let us say in a plate, and there is a dropping there, not all of it become najis. If you remove that part, all which is najis, the rest will remain tahir. But if it is oil, let us say vegetable oil, that if you remove it by spoon, the place gets filled right away, then if part of it become najis, all of it will be najis. So this is how to differentiate between liquid and non-liquid. He gave the example of taking part of it. Issue 131. If a fly or an insect sits on wet, najis thing and later sits on wet, tahir thing, the tahir thing will become najis if one is sure that the insect was carrying najasat with it, and if one is not sure, then it is tahir. You see, about the insects or animals, if the animals have original impurity in their body, then it is najis. But if original impurity is out, then they become tahir. Now, an insect may stand on a najis thing and then fly and come to on our cloth it stand. Now, is our cloth will become najis or not? Say if there is original impurity in the legs or the wings of the insect, then we say it is najis. But if there is no original impurity, then it is tahir. So we regard things as tahir if there is no original impurity. Again, this is a practical problem in areas where there are too many house fly and the place might not be always tahir around. Issue 132. If a part of one's body which is perspiring becomes najis, all those parts to which the sweat reaches will become najis. Where it does not, So if it is hot season and I am perspiring and then I was injured in my neck, for example, if the sweat comes to my dress, to my shoulder only, then my shoulder will be najis. But all my body will not be najis. But if the perspiration is too much, that the sweat is coming and covering my body, okay, wherever the sweat is going, it becomes najis because it's passing through the blood, and from the blood is coming to my body. So he said if part is najis, I mean if, let us say, my hand here is najis, and I am perspiring, naturally I am not keeping my hand like this, that the perspiration will go back, usually down. So only that part which perspiration passes, because it is liquid, passes to blood and cross from the blood to other part, only those parts will be najis. Not all my body will become najis. Issue 133, if there is blood in the phlegm or substance which comes out of the nose or throat, the part with the blood will be najis and the remaining part will be tahir. Hence, if these substances come out of the mouth or the nose, the part about which one is sure that najasat has reached will be najis, and the part about which one is doubtful whether najasat has reached it or not will be considered as tahir. See, the phlegm might come from the chest, or one have running nose, and sometimes with the saliva, and sometimes part of it has blood. You say only that part which has blood is najis. Around it is not najis because that is a solid type, or semi-liquid is not a liquid type. So if the phlegm comes out of the mouth, if I know the blood which is at the middle touched my lips, then my lips are najis. If I don't know, I can regard it as tahir, because the general rule, my lips was tahir, and I am not sure whether it was contaminated or not, then it will remain tahir. Issue 134, if an ewer or a vessel with a hole in its bottom is placed on najis ground and its water ceases to flow, allowing water to collect under it till it is seen as one with the water inside the vessel, the water in the vessel will be najis. However, if the water inside the vessel continues to flow forcefully, it will not become najis. You know, well, they use the vessels sometimes for the toilet or for the garden or whatever it is, and some of them get a hole in it and the water comes out. Now if I put it on a ground which is najis, said if the water comes continuously forcefully, the najasat from the ground will not go back to the vessel and all the water will not be najis. But if the water is not flowing forcefully and then the water is collected on the ground and the ground was najis and water is mixed together, naturally the water in that vessel become najis, and you should avoid it. This is another just a practical example he is saying, otherwise the general law is known, but this is some examples of life. Issue 135, if a thing enters the body reaching najasat but has no trace of it, when brought out of the body it is tahir. Hence, if the apparatus of enema or its water enters one's rectum, or a needle or knife or any other similar thing is driven into the body and has no trace of najasat, when it is taken out later, it is not najis. Same is the case with sputum and a mucus of the nose. If it contacts blood within the body, but does not have any trace of blood when it comes out of the body. Actually here the general rule, inside the body what we call najis is tahir. The blood inside our vessels is tahir, not najis. The stool inside the intestine is tahir, is not najis. The saliva inside the mouth is tahir, not najis. Well, the mouth is, coming out, but I said inside the nose, is tahir. So now if the running nose and inside there is blood and the sputum coming out is touching blood and coming out, but when come out there is no blood in it, he said will not be najis because the blood inside the body is tahir. And if we use apparatus for enema, it might touch some stool when it goes, but when it come out there is no sign of a stool in it. They said it is tahir, unless we see sign of a stool. Now naturally stool has come out, or there is blood has come out, it becomes tahir. These are the general rules and regulations about taharat. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi